If you think Dogman is just a legend, keep watching. From shadowy figures stalking rural backroads, from towering wolf-like creatures emerging from the tree line, these sightings have left witnesses shaken, speechless, and forever changed. If you've ever wondered what really growls in the wilderness after sunset, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's take a look.
People, if you're driving this time of night, keep your eye on those shoulders. Folks are saying they've seen eyes glowing in the dark and something tall, canine, standing upright just beyond the tree line. I don't know if this is a hoax or not, but if you're headed north tonight, I'd keep those doors locked and the high beams ready. Dogman sightings are picking up all across Michigan. First near Elk Rapids, out by Short's Brewing Facility, and now reports are coming in from as far south as the Ambassador Bridge.
A lot of people in his group, Sidebar, know each other, have known each other all their life, but they don't share those stories because you are crazy.
Yep.
I don't want to be pegged as that person.
Let me tell you that is such a true statement. The story I told you guys about the guy that was hunting in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was 15 and now he's in his upper 30s now. I saw a documentary on YouTube of Dogman, and I think it was about Dogman in Kentucky. And it was just people, being interviewed about their experiences. The first people I saw was a father-son group. They were talking about their experience with a Dogman. Sent the link to this guy up in Kentucky, said, hey, check this out. It's all about the Dogman in your area. And he goes, I know that guy. We go fishing together all the time. I never knew he had a Dogman encounter.
Wow.
And it's the same reason.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it.
Don't talk. Yeah. That's the way I am. I don't.
Well, when you get laughed at 2 or 3 times, you quit.
That's right.
You quit. You pick real.
Or you're a member of a small Baptist church and you come in and you got people that are judgmental. They're like, well, what has your family done to make you see things like this or whatever? You don't want to be judged. You don't
want to cast a demon out of you.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I got a crazy Dogman encounter for you. This one was sent to me from Kyle, and Kyle is 31 years old. He said, my sighting happened when I was 24 years old, and it was about 8 p.m. on a summer night, driving back from my friend's house, heading home, driving on M91. I turned left onto East Ellis Street when I saw what looked like a 9-foot Dogman werewolf creature standing on its hind legs, resting against the back of a stop sign. He said, I figured the signs on the roads were about 8 foot tall, so I'm assuming the creature was roughly 9 foot tall on its hind legs. It had yellow eyes and bright white teeth. Its mane was jet black. I stopped probably 15 feet in front of the sign, and I couldn't really make it out until I threw my high beams on, and that's when it crouched down on all fours and stared at me like it was looking into my soul. It looked towards the open field to the right of the road, probably 80 yards away. There's thick, heavy woods beyond the open field. The creature looked back at me in the car and then jumped from the sign 20 yards into the open field in a crouched position, and it leaped again another 20 yards. Then it leaped 60 yards, or basically out of sight. My whole encounter probably lasted 3 to 5 minutes. I've only told 3 people this event.
The only known survivor of the allegedly true 1982 werewolf attack in the land between the lakes of Kentucky says he crawled under an RV and listened while a creature tore through the people he was traveling with. This is his story. Around May of 2021, a witness emerged saying he was with the family the night of the attack. He said he was tired of listening to people tell the story incorrectly, and he was here to set the record straight. His name was Roger, and to this day, he remains the only person to say he survived the beast. Roger says he was traveling with the family that fateful day: Levi, Diane, their son Stephen, and their daughter Connie. According to him, he was outside of the motorhome preparing for target practice when he heard screaming from the campsite. When he returned, he claims he saw Stephen being attacked by a large, black, upright creature. Levi, the father, grabbed Roger's weapon and fired. He hit the creature in the shoulder. It dropped Stephen, but the attack didn't stop. Roger says the creature turned on Levi and mauled him. Roger retrieved the weapon and fired again, this time hitting it near the neck. According to Roger, the creature growled, then turned its focus to the RV, where Diane and Connie were hiding. It broke through the rear window and brutally attacked them both inside. Roger says he crawled under the vehicle and stayed hidden, listening to everything. Eventually, he says the creature dragged Connie away. Her body was later found about 50 feet from the motorhome up in a tree. Roger believes the creature collapsed and died not far from her, but the body was never recovered, at least not publicly.
Steel Mills, Youngstown, Ohio, you'll see the picture of exactly what I'm talking about. The railroad tracks right in front of the buildings. And then just beyond them, there would be giant piles of coke, which is basically an ingredient in the steel making process. It's just something that they utilize to make it. And they had huge piles of these things. I don't even know how high. I would say at least 15, 20 feet high, mile each way. So as far as the eye could see, it was just piles of this material. And these dogs ran right in front of our building and made a quick left. They ran across the railroad tracks. They went up the one side of the pile of coke and then down the other side. And immediately we start hearing fighting. We assumed that the dogs were fighting with each other. We had no idea what was going on because they were on the other side. It was dark. We couldn't see. All we could hear is dogs attacking. After maybe 2 or 3 seconds, we started to realize, no, they're not fighting with each other. They're fighting with something else, because what came over the top of these dogs biting and barking was a very loud and deep growl, roar that basically let out, which every one of us, our eyes open, we're like, oh my God, there's something over there. They're attacking something else. And within a few seconds, we start hearing yelping. These dogs are yelping in pain. And then what happened next was when all of the craziness started. And what happened was 2 dogs, one after another, come literally flying over the top of this pile of material. They were thrown, like somebody had grabbed them and thrown them with great force. The first one, I'll always remember, it was upside down and its butt and tail were facing us. So it definitely didn't jump. It was thrown and it hit the ground and rolled and it got up and limped away. Another one came and it hit the top of this and material went everywhere and it hit the ground. And I'll always remember this because, I'm a dog lover. I'm an animal lover. It had a huge gash from its shoulder all the way to its midsection. It looked like something had flayed open the dog. And it was still alive. It was bleeding all over. It got up and it ran away. And, I always remember, I was like, oh my God, I hope that dog lives. I don't think it did. It was very, very brutal the way that it looked. And then a couple more come thrown over it. And then the rest of the pack came running. And they all went back the way they came, which was to our left in the way that we would come into this area. And we're watching them run away. There's blood on the ground. We're hearing them yelp as they run away. And as we're watching in just complete disbelief, one of my friends, I remember him like touching me on my back. He was to my left and behind me. And he goes, guys, what is that? What is that over there? And we all simultaneously looked to our right. And what ended up crawling up to the top of the pile of this material was, quite honestly, something that and I say this all the time and I'll always say it, it was so big that it looked fake. It was the biggest animal I have ever seen to date. My friends agreed. There were 4 of us again. So we were all able to talk about this for years after this experience. 2 of them are gone, unfortunately. They passed away. 1 is left. And, we always talk about this with each other, or we did. And my buddy that's still here, we still to this day talk about it. And it was basically just a gigantic wolf-looking creature that was on all 4s. We started comparing over time what we could say the size of this thing looked like. And the easiest thing that we found once we started looking at pictures of things, and because, this was in the late 80s, we didn't have the internet and all that. So we're looking at magazines and books, and the shape and the size of this thing was the closest to a polar bear. But it was as big as any polar bear or bigger. And it had the telltale shape of a polar bear, where if you have say like a Kodiak grizzly bear, it's like a walking boulder. Just giant and massive and just boom, boom. This was very sleek, long-limbed, very lengthy, more muscular instead of just big and bulky and long. And it crawled to the top of this pile and it was watching where the dogs had gone, and it hadn't paid any attention to us. It hadn't noticed us at that point. And what it did next, I've always said this, some people might find this amusing. It was not amusing at all. because of what happened. So this dog was watching them. It was looking in the direction they left, and it lifted its leg and it did its business. And immediately we knew it was a male because of what it did. And what was scary about it was the force at which, when it started urinating, at which it hit this pile of this material it was standing on, pieces just started going up in the air. You could hear the stream. It was like a hose had just been turned on. And I stepped back. I was like, whoa, that's not normal. It's just so massive, and it was so strong of the stream that this thing let go. I started feeling real fear because, any second it's going to notice us. And just as I'm thinking about that, my buddy who had been to the back and noticed it first started to stumble backwards and fell into that metal makeshift wall that I had been describing to you. And, what happened. It made that telltale sign of metal on concrete, and immediately this thing snaps its head and it looks at us, and we all froze. Because immediately the first thing that jumped out to all of us was not eye shine. It was as bright as there was a power source coming from inside of this creature. There was a yellow, amber, kind of orange, bright light that was coming from its eyes. And that's where we all were drawn. That's where I was drawn immediately. And it was so big that you could see the anatomy of the eyes. So you could see the pupil. You could see, each distinct circular shape of the eye. If you look, if we're just being general about the shape of the eye, you have multiple circles in your eyes. You could see each one of them we're probably about 20, 25 feet from this animal. So close, but far enough to where we realized the size of it was just so abnormal and so scary that, we were just froze. And it started looking at each one of us. And you could tell which one of us it looked at, because its eyes, again, were just so big, and they were just lit up like Christmas trees. And it looked at each one of us. Each one of us, it looked down the line. There were 4 of us. And when it looked at me, it felt like it was going through me. And what happened next was this thing did something so alien and so insane that it finally took us to things that we had been taught are myths, things that are just only made for movies or comic books or magazines, Fangoria. Or this thing stood up on 2 legs, and it was already so massive. Again, it looked fake. It was just like, this can't be real. I'm sleeping. I'm going to wake up anytime. I have to wake up. But we were awake, and it stood up, and it was twice as big as it was. And it was just so crazy. And we had entered into now everything we've been taught about creatures and werewolves and anything like that are fake. Now we're looking at a real one in front of us. And again, the thoughts going through my head, and I asked my friends later, like, did you guys feel like, we were sleeping, like you were dreaming? And they said similar things like, yeah, like I felt like I was going to wake up at any moment, but then we just didn't. And I kept having this sense of, okay, this is dream, this can't be real. And it stood up, and it was twice as big as it was, height-wise. It had the dog-shaped legs. I remember immediately the thing that stood out to me immediately was, it had a man's shape to it, but you always hear people say, oh, well, it was man-shaped. Well, you can't compare what we saw to a man. There's no man that was built like this. Its arms were so long, that's the first thing I noticed, that they went past its knees almost to its ankles. It had hands that looked very similar, and I got a good look at them a little bit later, and I'll touch on it, but it had hands that looked like a raccoon, like the hands of a raccoon, just giant, huge hands, and massive, just build, muscles everywhere. It did not have long, scraggly hair. I would say the hair was probably 1 inch long at most. It was actually almost like it was groomed. It was very tight. You could see every muscle. It was as black as any black I've ever seen. It was almost like so black that it was darker than the night blackness behind it. It just stood out. It was so dark. And all you could see are these eyes shining. And it had, huge lats, huge biceps. I remember specifically when I noticed the legs, the quads on it, you could see, any bodybuilder's quads, you see the separation of the muscles and everything. You could see that. But it was so much bigger than any human being you have ever seen. And then what it did was it growled, but it was almost like a growl and a roar at the same time. And the way it came out is I've seen things over the years. We've heard about infrasound, about how tigers and lions, and, they will use infrasound to stun prey. It can actually jiggle the insides and the organs. And that's what I felt. And that's what my buddies felt. I've seen recordings of actually crocodiles and alligators when they do their kind of growl in the water and water bounces off them. It was similar to that, but animal-like, like wolf-like. Tiger-like, something of a combination of that. And it went through us all. I remember when it hit me, I felt it go through my chest. And the first thing I felt is I felt like I was going to go down on my knees. My legs from the hips all the way down to my ankles, my calves, everything felt so weak that when you have dreams when you're being chased by something and you can't run, that's what it felt like. But I couldn't move. I thought I was going to go down on both my knees. I was kind of bent over, but I was still looking at it. My other friend that was to my immediate right later told me that was what he felt similarly. Two of our other friends actually were completely bent over. One was dry heaving, said he felt like he was going to pass out. The other said he felt like he was going to throw up. Something's wrong. What's going on? And it takes a couple steps towards us. And I think the steps of it, moving towards us and how far it moved after it took 2 steps towards us snapped everybody back into reality. And I remember my buddy right over my left shoulder who had noticed it first, he turned and ran into the building, and we followed suit, not quickly, as fast as we could. And we just headed up the stairs. We ran to the 3rd floor. I don't know why we went to the 3rd floor. We just did. There was really no way out of there, and I need to explain that too. So going up to the 4th floor, you would be stuck on the 4th floor. You could go out to the roof area. There was a short set of stairs that would take you to the roof. On the outside from the 3rd floor was the fire escape. The fire escape only went from the 3rd floor up to the roof because the 2nd floor on down had broken away and fallen down and was laying in a heap on the ground. All of the stairs were all twisted up in metal and everything. And so we really had nowhere to go. We were standing on the 3rd floor, and my one friend who had noticed it first was going basically postal. He starts losing it. He starts crying and screaming. And I remember, I'll always remember this. I was always a big kid, and I grabbed him out of fear. And I'm starting to sweat right now because I'm thinking about this. It always brings me back. I grabbed him, and I put my hand around his mouth, and I grabbed him so hard that I lifted him up the floor. His feet were hanging, and he still, muffled screams, and we all are screaming at him. You got to shut up. It's going to come in here. It's going to hear you. You have to be quiet. I was using choice words, of course. Finally, he started, gasping for air, and I put him down, and, I looked at him, and we'll let you go. Are you going to be quiet? He let him go, and just as we let him go, he takes a deep breath. You hear thump. The building vibrates, and then you hear the telltale sign of basically nails on concrete. And we all knew what that meant. I knew immediately it was coming in the building. So we're standing, this half wall is in front of us. We're looking down, and all of a sudden, we have this huge fire. It starts to come in, and you got that kind of train effect of, when is a train going to end? That's a long train. Well, This thing's coming in, and it goes past this makeshift wall that we had created. And the first thing we noticed first was the shadow that hit the wall. Now, anybody walking by a fire, even if you're small, you're going to get a big shadow that gets thrown. So imagine something so big that it looks fake. And that's what we're looking at, its shadow. So the shadow just overtook the entire wall. There really was no shape or form on the wall. It was just black. And then we see the head come in, then the shoulders and the rest of it, and the tail. And as it's walking in, you could see, that like when tigers or big cats walk, you get the scapulas that pop up, in the back. And you're seeing the bones lifting, but they were surrounded by so much muscle that you could see it rippling as it walked. And it's looking around and it's sniffing the air. It's obviously looking for us, and we're all trying to be as quiet as we can, just frozen in place. And, when it got near the fire, you could start to see that it had saliva just pouring out of its mouth. I'm not talking just dripping. I'm talking like the sound of like when you're in an empty building or something and it's raining and you're hearing big drops hitting. The saliva's hitting the concrete as it's walking. And that's a sign that, said to me immediately, it's either going to feed or kill, and that's why it's salivating. And it bares its teeth every once in a while, and you get the glint of this white, and you see that the teeth, even when its mouth was closed, the top canines were hanging out, and you would get little glints of the bottom ones here that would show. So its teeth definitely hung out of its mouth, even when it wasn't baring the teeth. And it walked by the fire, and you could see immediately jet black, except for, I thought that it was maybe a reflection of the fire, but we all agreed later that it had a very light white stripe that went from the back of its neck all the way down to the tail. And that was the only other color that this thing showed other than the eyes. You always hear stories about people that see dogmen in the woods during the day, and they talk about the different colored eyes and, blue to black to brown. I don't know what this thing's true eye color was. All we could see was this orange amber color, just literally causing things to light up wherever it looked. So it wasn't eye shine. It was something internal coming out of this thing. And then another thing that really has brought me into believing that these are more than a natural creature, and that there is something supernatural going on, is when it walked by the fire, and its front hands, paws, whatever you want to call them, had touched the ground near the fire. Something happened where it only happened with its front left hand, or whatever you want to call it. It basically blinked out. It cloaked for a second. And you could see they see things through it, almost like that predator effect. And when it put its hand down by the fire, something really strange happened aside from the cloak effect. If you've ever seen video of the sun and the magnetic anomalies and storms that they have on the surface of the sun, where you see, the tubes come out of it and the different shapes and magnetic storms, basically that happened right around its cloaked out paw. And it only happened for about 2-3 seconds, enough that I noticed it and my other buddy noticed it. The other two did not. They were at a different angle. And it had basically just looked around the room. It bared its teeth after it sniffed, and it snapped its head and looked right up at us. It knew exactly where we were. It finally caught our scent, and it looked at us, and it looked up at us, and it bared its teeth, and it growled again, and you felt a vibration. But I truly believe that this half concrete wall that we had in front of us if it threw that infrasound at us again, I think that half concrete wall blocked it, because we didn't get sick or felt funny or anything. We felt a little vibration. You felt it. Like, I remember I had I think it was my right hand on the top of the wall at that time, and I felt a little vibration in it, but didn't get sick or anything. So I truly believe that wall blocked whatever, because of the angle of it being down on the first floor, us being on the third, and it threw it at us. I truly think it did. And then it stood up again, and it was almost like, like a comic book pose. It threw its arms out to its sides, and its muscles all clenched, and it looked at us, and it growled, and it looked out to the left, it looked to the right, and it saw the stairs on the wall, and it looked back at us, and I got a sinking feeling in my stomach, because I knew what it was going to do. It dropped back down onto all four, and it ran for the stairs. And, like I had told you, it was missing 4 stairs, so we had to kind of hop over and climb the wall to get up. And it jumped over that like it wasn't even there. And it was heading up, very fluid. Its tail, I remember when it ran, you could tell it utilized it kind of like a rudder. So it was kind of moving. When it moved, its tail kind of bent certain ways. Its tail reminded me of a mountain lion or a cougar. Very non-hairy, short hair, very thick. I remember the bones in its legs and its arms being just gigantically thick. And again, that sense of, not only are we looking at something that's not supposed to exist, the size again is just so massive, it has to be fake. And again, this is really happening. And when it had stood up, I forgot to mention this, it had stood up near one of those concrete pillars that I had mentioned the building had in all 4 corners. And we had gone back years later. We never went back for years. And we got an idea of how big these pillars were, which gave us an idea of the size estimation of this animal. And when it stood up, it basically widthwise blocked out the pillar. So it was as wide as the pillar, 4 to 5 feet across. And height-wise, the ceilings were probably where, at the sides where there was floor above. It was probably 15 to 18 feet high. I would guesstimate, and my friends guesstimated, it was somewhere between 10 to 12 feet tall. So it stood up. Its ears probably were at least 12 feet at the tip. And again, I've heard people describe sizes of Sasquatch and other cryptids of massive size. And, you know, people, oh, well, you were kids. Well, we went back as adults. And I'm telling you, we remembered where it stood and it had to be minimum 10 feet. I truly think, again, tips of the ears, 11, 12 feet tall. Now it's heading up the stairs towards us. Two of my friends are going absolutely ape crap crazy. Running. One is running in circles. The one that I had to grab his mouth. He's screaming bloody murder in circles, just running in circles, going nowhere. And he finally jets for the stairs to take him up to the 4th floor. My other friend runs for the fire escape. Again, you can't go down. So only way is up. And I'm frozen, petrified. My other friend standing next to me, he just said, I was standing next to you. I didn't know what to do. And it made its way from the 1st to the 2nd floor in seconds. And then it started to head up from the 2nd floor to the 3rd. And where I was standing, if anybody would have, this thing or anyone would have walked up to the top of the stairs, the first thing it would have met would have been me. And it would have came within 2 feet of me once it got to the top of the stairs. It got to the middle of the stairs, and I started having true belief that this is the day that I'm going to die. I started to think about my family. I thought about my dog, who I loved very much. I thought about, I was getting ready to go into high school to play football at the school, Ursuline High School, a Catholic school, very big into sports and athletics as well as academics. And my dad had played there. My whole family had gone there. I was very proud that I was going to be playing football there. And I thought, I'm not going to get to play. All this is going through my head. It's all gone. And we're going to watch each one of us truly be mauled and killed by this creature, and this is the end. I really believe this was the day I was going to die. And it was probably within 6 to 7 feet from me when I looked at it, and it was looking right at me or at my friend. I think it was looking at me because he was behind me, and I would have been, like, again, the first one it got to. And right at that moment, I will always believe this to the day I die, and the sweat's starting again. I believe there was divine intervention. I truly believe it. I'm Catholic. I'm not a great Catholic. I don't go to church a lot. I don't practice as much as I should. But I think that there was divine intervention because once it hit that 6, 7 feet mark from me, where if it would have jumped, it would have been on me. We heard a train. And whenever a train would come by, we would always get nervous because if they'd see, us in there or the light from a fire, we'd be in big trouble. They would call the police or whoever, and we'd be in trouble. And we had never, ever had a train go by where they laid on the horn. And it came by, and as soon as it went by the building, be it from the angle the guy that was driving it saw the inside, what was going on, or he just saw the fire, which I seem to think he noticed how bright of a fire we had going in there. He laid on this one, and this thing stopped right 6 to 7 feet from me, and it looked at me, and it looked back at the opening where you could see the train going by, and we're all screaming bloody murder. Somebody help us, please save us. My other 2 friends are gone. They had, one went up to the roof, the other ran up the stairs. I don't know where he was. My friend and I were screaming, someone help us. And it looked back at us, and it looked back again, and it turned around and started running down. And it took literally, I would say, 1 to 1.5 seconds to get from where it stood 6 to 7 feet from me at the 3/4 mark of that 2nd to 3rd floor step area to the steps of the going from the 2nd to the 1st. And then something else supernatural happened where you stopped seeing movement of joints in the tail, and it just was a black streak that left the building. And it wasn't just from how fast it was. It had basically gone from physical creature to almost shadow. And it just was just a black mass had just left the building, and it was gone. And I'll always remember that. And through the years, the things I've been learning, hearing about shadow people and people, very similar things that I saw and we saw when it did that. And we're screaming, and the train just is, ka-clonk, ka-clonk, ka-clonk. And it starts, we're thinking it's slowing down, but it wasn't. And it starts getting farther and farther away. And then the hope of we're going to be saved is slowly leaving us. And then it's gone. And then the fear sets back in that this thing is going to turn around and it's going to come back in and it's going to kill us. And by that time, my other two friends had come back down because they heard the train and they heard us screaming help. And I think that they thought that, everything was going to be all right. And people were coming for us. And they my one buddy almost had kind of almost a half smile on his face. And when we all looked at each other, everybody was pale white and just so weak from the experience already that I wanted to curl up in a ball and just lay there. And the fear set back in. It's going to come back in. And an hour goes by and we're still up there and it didn't. And then we start talking to each other, it's after 10 o'clock. We have to get out of here because this thing's going to eventually come back. And my friend that had lost it and that we had to shut up is totally postal, crying, screaming, I just want to go home. I want my mom and dad. Please, God, help us. And we're trying to calm him down and he won't. And we're like, listen, we have to go. He's like, no, we can't go out there. It's going to be waiting for us. It's going to be there. And we all thought that. But then again, the fear of as each minute clicks by, we're giving this thing the opportunity, if it did run away, to come back and see if we're still there, or it knows we're still there. It's outside just watching. And we kept looking at the space between this makeshift wall and the opening of the building where there's concrete, looking for those orange eyes shining out there, and we couldn't see them. And it was hard to see, but if it was looking at us, it was so bright, we would have saw it. And so we finally decided, okay, we have to at least go down to the second floor. And my friend is just going crazy, and we're dragging him with us. We pull him down the second floor, and we're probably up there for maybe half an hour. And then we go down to the first, and we said, we have to make a run for it. We have to go. We have to go now. It's almost 11 o'clock at night. We're in an old steel mill in downtown Youngstown. I mean, this is not where you want to be, even if there's not a mythological creature trying to hunt you down and kill you. So we're like, we have to get out of here. And we just remembered then, I remember thinking, oh my God, we have weapons. But I'm telling you, Josh, there is no way on God's green earth that if even with me having a 38 on me, that it would have done nothing but anger this thing. I thank God we didn't ever pull them out or shoot at it or anything. I don't think we could have even hit it. Number one, we were so horrified. Number two, it would have done nothing. It would have just pissed it off, and it would have mauled us even worse. So we start to leave. We have to go. I am sweating. I'm sorry. Surprised I haven't cried yet. I usually break a little bit.
Oh, dude, your story's woo.
It's
man. I'm all choked up. Go ahead. Go. Keep going.
Finally, we start to leave, and my friend is screaming bloody murder. Please don't let us go out there. It's going to kill us. I grabbed him, and I'm sorry I have to use my language. I grabbed him. I said, listen to me. I said, you are going to come with us, or we're going to leave you here to die. You are going to come with us, or it's going to come in here and it will kill you, and you will be here alone. We will leave you here. You either come with us now or you will stay. And he's screaming, don't leave me, don't leave me. So finally, we turned around, me and my friend. We took his hand, and he grabbed both of our shirts, and he's strangling us, pulling on our shirts, and we had to literally pull him out of the building to get out there. We get out to the concrete outcropping, and the fear sets in also because what I had forgotten to mention was when you climb up, you could look underneath, and it would go way back into the building. So it was very, very reasonable to think that this thing was underneath, waiting for us to drop, and then it would be over, and no one would hear us. It could maul each of us, take its time. No one would have ever heard us. And even if they heard screams in the downtown area or up by the highway, no one would know where they were coming from. So we jump down and we start taking off, and we're going as fast as we can. My buddy's choking us to death. Finally, we get him to the point where he's running on his own, and we're all running together, almost arm in arm together in a straight line. And it takes a half an hour to get to my friend's house from that blast furnace. So that's a half an hour of complete and utter terrorizing fear that we were in, with every noise, every pebble one of us kicked. Every time the wind would pick up and leaves would blow, we would think it was there, it was behind us, it was chasing us. We'd turn around and stop and look around. We finally got to the last portion of where we could get out of this area. And what it was a hill, literal hill of gravel and just material that going down was easy. You could turn your feet to the side, standing up, and just walk yourself down slowly. Going up, you had to go up on all fours. And we would always laugh at each other. We would always make fun of whoever was the first that would start sliding down, because we would always lose our foot. It would always go out from under us, and it would take us longer, and it was exhausting to get up, having this gravel coming out from under your hands and feet. So now we're crawling up this pile of gravel, this huge mountain of gravel, and each one of us at different times, because we're trying to go as fast as we can, start to slide down, and the fear sets in that it's behind us, it's going to get us. And numerous times, each one of us screamed, "Is it behind me? Is it behind me?" And you turn around and you look, and it wouldn't be there. You'd expect to see it. We finally got up there. Me and my one buddy made it first, and we helped our other friends. We pulled them up, and we ran across the highway, and we went over the fence and across the street and to my buddy's house that lived across, and his parents weren't home. And I remember, this always sticks out to me. He had a hose, and I remember turning the hose on, and I just drank and drank and drank until my stomach felt like it was going to pop. And I just poured it all over my head, and each one of us did the same thing. And when we just sat on the porch and on the stairs, my other buddy was in the front yard, and each one of us in a complete and utter daze, not talking for at least an hour at least, staring across out towards where we had come from. We couldn't see the area, obviously, it was so far, but we're just staring in shock and disbelief. My one friend who had lost it, he didn't talk for 2 weeks. He had to go start seeing a psychiatrist. I had major problems. I started to go, I'm half Lebanese. We belong to St. Mary's Church. If you're from the Youngstown area, you know it. It's a church there that Lebanese go to. And I went there and I talked to the priest there, and I told him what happened, and I expected, the priest did not believe me or say anything, and he believed me immediately. And he had told me, "Matthew," he said, "you need to understand something. First and foremost," he said, "God saved your lives." He said, "I believe there was divine intervention." And he said, "Secondly, you need to understand that there are things in this world that most people have no clue about, any idea." And he mentioned exorcisms specifically. And he said, there are demons in this world. In the church, it is well known. You go all the way to Italy and Rome, and they teach, they have their top-notch exorcists that go all over the world for the most horrible demon exorcisms. And he mentioned maybe it was a demon or something, but he had given the impression and that he knew what it was. And he was not surprised at all that we saw something like this. And, the priest had said, sometimes these things bleed into our world, and they take some of us, and some of us are lucky enough to get away, or they just don't bother us. And he said, but there are a long-standing history of things that aren't supposed to exist existing in this world. And he said, I believe you. And I cried. I broke down. And, it wasn't, why would a child go to a priest and make up a story like that? And, we had talked about, obviously, the situation of us having to address this with our families. And we all agreed, there's 4 of us. We would always be with each other when we spoke to our parents together so that we could be there to back each other up. Well, 2 of my buddy's parents you guys are full of crap. They didn't want to hear it. Just get out of here. Go do what you're going to do. My parents, my mom walked out of the room. You're crazy. She didn't want to hear it. My dad, however, knew me and looked at me and said, well, maybe you guys saw a bear. Maybe it was a bear with mange, or maybe it was, some mutated creature, normal animal, a bear. He kept saying bear, because we kept telling him how big it was and what would you compare it to. And we talked about a polar bear. It was as big as a polar bear, but it didn't look like a polar bear. It looked like a wolf, looked like a man-shaped wolf, but it was giant. And he just kept saying, well, you guys saw something. They're 14-year-old kids. They saw, something natural. They just don't know what it is. Then my best friend's dad, who I'm not going to out him. He's passed away. So I'm not going to out him and his family because I'm very close to them. But all I'm going to say is, and any of my friends that see this, they know who I'm talking about and what his dad did. He basically was in charge of the city. He was in charge of the police and many other parts of it. And we told him, his mom did the same thing mine did. She just said, you guys are crazy. You saw a big dog or whatever. And she left the room. She didn't want to hear it. And his dad, however, got very upset. And he gave us the impression that he knew what we were talking about. And he first and foremost went off on us and said, Joyce, what the hell are you guys doing down there? You could get killed down there. The place is falling apart. He said people put bodies down there. There was a couple homeless people that were mauled by packs of dogs down, and he brought that up, which makes me wonder, was it really a pack of dogs that mauled these 2 homeless men? Was it? I don't know. After seeing what I saw and we saw, I can't guarantee it. But he didn't want to talk about it anymore. He warned us, if you ever go back down there, he said, I promise you, I will put you in JJC. He said, you will not play football at Ursula, Matt. He looked at me right. He said, you think that you'll play? He says, your coach will never allow you to play. He'll think you're crazy. He said, you guys will go, you'll go to the city school, which is Ryan High School. He said, you won't go to Ursula. You won't go to that school. You'll go to the city school, and you guys will be made fun of the rest of your lives, and you'll be the joke of Youngstown. And he called my father, and I'm going to say something here. My older sister, I told her about this recently. My parents are gone, and I've never really told anybody in my family about this other than my dad, because of what happened when my dad was called to my friend's house. And my sister and I got into it. This was just recently. And she looked at me and she said, Matt, what are you talking about? She goes, what do you mean? She goes, how did we never hear about this? She says, why didn't mom or dad tell us about this? What are you talking? She was denying that I'm telling the truth. I'm looking at her, I'm a 50-year-old man. You think I'm going to lie to you? You're my sister. What are you, Chris? We got into it. And I'm being honest about this. And if she hears it, she can admit it. We got into it. And I was very upset about this. But the reason I didn't talk about it, especially, and I'm sure my younger brother, who's only a year younger than me, is not going to be happy about this when he finds out, because we were best friends growing up. We were inseparable. But when my best friend's dad called my father to come, he sat us down and he talked to my dad. My dad's name was Ken. And he said, Ken, he said, you know the situation here. He said, if these boys go around talking about it, number one, all their classmates are going to go down there. Somebody's going to get killed just from getting hurt from the buildings and everything. He said, secondly, he said, your son is going to be the joke of his school. He won't play ball. And he looked at me and he had this look of, oh, man. And he said, you have to promise me that you make your son not talk about this. He doesn't tell his siblings about this. You don't talk to your wife about this. And he pulled my dad aside and they went in the kitchen and they talked. And when I went home, my dad kept looking at me my dad and I were super ultra close. We called each other best buddy. We were close. All of the kids, 5 kids in my family, we all have special relationships with my parents. But me and my dad had the closest. And he kept looking at me with this just fear in his face that I kept telling him, I'm crying hysterically. Dad, you have to believe me. This is what we saw. And he kept looking at me like, Jesus, I think he's telling the truth. And after what my friend's dad said to him is when he really got scared. And he said, you can't tell your sisters and brothers about this. Don't talk about it with my younger brother. He kept saying, don't tell him, because we were inseparable. He said, you can't tell him. He said, he's not going to be able to sleep. You're going to cause problems. So he put the fear of God in me. And so did my buddy's dad. A week later, my best friend tells me he finally got his dad to sit down with him and talk. And he said, he knows what it is. He said, he told him that his officers had gotten calls about these things. He had 2 officers that had seen it and that he knows all about it. And he gave him the implication that it at least had killed one of those 2 people that had been mauled in the downtown steel mill area, that were homeless people living in that area. He said, he basically told me that he knew everything about it. Don't ever go back down there. You guys are lucky to be alive. And we just were like, whoa, finally somebody is giving us credence and believing us. And I felt this sense of, oh my God, we're not crazy. We didn't see a bear. We're not just little kids that don't know what's going on. This is real and this is crazy. So, over the years, I've learned, obviously been just completely just stuck on what happened. I think about it every day. And the older I've gotten, the more I've gotten more involved in the cryptid community. I met you, I met Josh Turner and Barb Nunley. And I've talked to other people like Wes Germer and Tony Merkel. And, these guys are all making the same face that you're making right now, a little pale with your hand over your mouth. And, this is not, anybody can believe what they want. And I'm talking to anybody watching this right now. I'm looking at you right now. You can believe whatever you want. You can think that this is entertainment, because in the end of the day, this channel's for entertainment. But let me tell you something. I will go to my grave. I'm giving you pertinent, personal information about myself and where I live and my family and the schools I went to and the area I grew up into. This happened. This was real. I have no reason to make myself look like a crazy person or just somebody looking for attention. This really happened. You can think I'm crazy if you want, but let me tell you something. You look at all of the instances of people are having more and more experiences these days. And because of media, we're hearing more about them and you're getting more information out than ever. there's stuff going on. Right now, I'm nervous. I have anxiety in my chest. I'm sweating. My shirt's starting to show it. I keep wiping sweat from me. I usually crack a tear or two. I'm surprised I haven't. There are things out there that people don't want to believe are real. There are. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just telling you this is what happened. If there was one person you can question, there were 4 of us. 4 of us, okay? 4. We all talked about it for years. 2 of my friends are gone. God rest their souls. And they had issues for years. And they started doing other things that ended their lives prematurely that I believe was because of what happened to us. My other friend refuses to discuss it. He has a very successful business. He thanks me all the time whenever we talk that I have the guts to talk about this. He's afraid to talk about it. He to this day has severe PTSD and doesn't even like to discuss it more than 5 minutes. This happened, and it almost ended our lives. And people need to know that these things are real, and they're still out there.
Now, at first, that scared me when it happened.
Thank you for watching. If these Dogman encounters sent a chill down your spine, make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments below. As always, stay safe, stay aware, question everything, and remember, out there in those woods, something might be watching.